Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Sam for another spoiler discussion. And this week we are, of course, on to episode 8 of The Last of Us, When We Are in Need. And we're at the penultimate episode of the series. But first of all, how are we doing tonight, Sam?
I'm good. I'm angry. I'm really angry. This episode made me so angry. But it's been a long week. We don't get all the cute stuff from Left Behind anymore. Oh no. We get hard hitting drama, intense situations, which is what The Last of Us is about, really. So yeah,
Yeah,
enjoyed myself a lot today.
it's a wonderful episode, and it is one I'm excited to get into. It's one when we rewind the clocks back to the preview we needed for the series. I was like, "Oh, will the cliffhanger for the series be the cannibal?" It's like, no, penultimate episode, and we get it all done. So, we want to hear from everybody at home. So please do comment your thoughts on The Last of Us. This is a spoiler discussion. Bring up anything you want to bring up in the video today, as long as it's not spoilers for next week. I know that press have seen the episodes now. They sent it out alongside episode 8 for the week-to-week ones, and obviously those that saw it even earlier and those that played the games. One episode away from a perfect run. And as you can tell, my voice is a bit messed up. I may have over-celebrated a goal at the weekend at a football. Well, I wasn't at the football game, watching a football game, and for some reason, my vocal cords are not functioning that well. So I've got a mic literally right as close as I can to it. It's too loud to comment it. But aside from that, you can find us on social media for more videos: Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and cinema_savvy, and link to Redbubble in that description. It's the first time I'm talking properly since Saturday, so I'm hoping my voice just doesn't fade during the video, because I've got to record a review for Rocky 2 tomorrow night and The Mandalorian on Wednesday, and it's the Oscars this Sunday. Really not a good week to have a voice messed up, but it was worth it in the grand scheme of things. Thank you, Reese Nelson. Aside from football, Sam, how are you doing?
Fine. I mean, yeah. I mean, aside from the massive football things, which I don't really give much about, but I mean, a loss is a loss, especially when it's a big one. But no, like it's been good week, a good week, good weekend. I was actually, because I was ill last week when we came on, I wasn't very well, and I feel much better now, which thank God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
this week
in spirited news, though, we've got Martin who's already left us a comment before we went live. Just finished episode. I'm traumatized. I didn't see this coming at all. This is what's great. This is what's great about the series, is like, just off the bat, before we even get into our initial thoughts in the episode, watching this with my dad tonight. Again, he's not played the game.
I want him to come on here. I want to hear his things direct.
Channel will go. No, thank you. There was a laugh at the end, and I was like, I don't know if this is a well-intentioned laugh, but it wasn't. It was after the butcher scene, basically. And I was like, I don't think this bit's meant to be funny. Like, she's just like turning this bloke into probably like a mushroom. But alas, there was
mushroom.
A weird laugh.
Like, don't say mushroom on here with cordyceps. He turns into cordyceps.
Well, he technically would. He would have been infected. We'll never know, because he never got it that far. But aside from that, if we recap last week, so we mentioned episode 7, Left Behind, a lovely episode. One I was maybe a bit harsh on when I shouldn't have. I think I just started off in a bad mood. I just can't remember something that happened. We were fine. I just think I think we weren't slating it, but the first 10 minutes I felt really bad, and then we just praised it for the next 40, as we always do.
Yeah, no, it's true. I did speak to someone who said that, like the episode before that one, they watched it the first time and didn't have a great reaction to it, but then they let it sink in a bit, and then they're like, oh, that was actually really, really good. So I don't know whether, because it is a week-to-week thing, sometimes you expect a bit more than is being done. I know there was a little bit of flack for last week for it not pushing the the story forward, when it's not necessarily, that doesn't happen with every show. But yet a filler episode doesn't mean that there's not good elements to it that makes it stand. And I think last week's episode does, because it helps with the characters. If it's not doing anything for the actual story, then it needs to do something with the characters, and it does so with Ellie. So I think that works in its favor. But I can understand, in a way, we've got 9 episodes. We don't, some of these episodes are longer, some are shorter. You kind of want to get more bang for your buck, I guess. And I think when we touch upon we'll touch upon this episode when we talk about this episode. I think one of my potential issues with it is the length and how much is in here, because I definitely think with a lot of The Last of Us, you could spread it out, which is why we initially thought, when is this season going to end? Because it could, with the amount of stuff that's in it, you could spread things out, you could compact it. They've done various things so far. With this episode, I think they probably could have given it an extra 20 minutes or another episode, really.
Yeah, I mean, if I give my thoughts, I love this episode, and even going back to, I know I say every week that I got to watch obviously the whole show together in January at the start. I did all 9 episodes in one night. I thought, like we said in that trailer, I thought this episode would be like a 2-parter. This could be the season finale. They'll change things around, and we got the whole thing in 56 minutes. And even watching it again today, out of context, you've had a week's gap. We've got a week till episode 9. I was not watching the clock in a bad way, but when I was watching, I was just checking. I was like, how long we got left? And I went out, I was like, we've got about 10 minutes left. And obviously, this was in the cage. And I was like, this is quick. When you think about the game, and I know we discussed that a lot, that obviously it's a very long-winded thing. And I do think in the game, this bit goes on a bit too much. But what I will say this is done, and I've put him as the thumbnail tonight. I mean, he opens the episode. The introduction of Scott Shepherd playing David in this, I think, is one of... I mean, there's been a lot of unbelievable casting across this series. I am so happy that they completely not switched up the character, but they went for, religious wrong, and that it wasn't, hey, look at this weird dude talking to Ellie who seems overly nice, but is clearly a creep. I love that they went for that, that preacher vibe, that we get the opening, we get the Jesus stuff, we get him reading the Bible, that we get to see this insane character develop across an hour. I love what they've done of this, from the look to the costume to the person they cast. Nothing against weird looking people, but I just think it would have been too easy if it was David. And I love this idea that they left a fallen quarantine zone and united together to become this pack. And although I don't sympathize with him as a character, when you get the big twist that they're cannibals, which isn't a twist for us who played the game, but when you watch, if anyone watched this episode again, go watch that food scene and you watch how they shoot every scene that has them making and prepping food. I thought it was incredible today. I absolutely love this episode.
Yeah, I mean, what annoys me a little bit is that I really want to hate a lot of people. Like, it's very easy to in the game to kind of find this new group of people and go, oh, well, I don't care about any of them. And every time we've seen antagonists in this show, they've always been surrounded by a group who, are also antagonists, but you get a different perspective, which you don't see very often in the game. So you see these people that are under David's rule, and he even says, well, majority don't know what they're eating. They're being told something else, and there's women there and younger people there. A lot of time in the game, it's just older men. You don't have those varying people in there. So to then just see parts of that makes me go, oh my God, like, what has happened here? And why are you following this psychopath? But yeah, his performance was outstanding. I mean, I think a lot of critics have already said about his performance, and Bella Ramsey's in this, but they really do carry the episode. I mean, once again, Joel isn't in it too much. When he is, he makes it count. But again, this is a 2-parter, I guess, with the last episode in a very loose way. But then we realize that it kind of connects back to the episode before that, to the very end of episode 6, which I think was a really good idea, because I think it sets up things again for season 2. For what you do has ramifications.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100% on that. I'm just going to bring a couple of comments. Got Derpy, that really that guy was not Jesus-like, but those changes were great. And this is kind of it, that I think the changes they made for this, kind of in line with your point, is that not as the ramifications. There's certain things that's come up over the last few weeks, things that I haven't necessarily noticed that others have jumped on. And when Ellie's talking about wanting to be an astronaut in episode 6, and that's something you get in the second game as a flashback, right? Them at the museum. There's loads of things they're touching upon, Jacksonville being the most obvious one. Also, Jacksontown being the obvious one of, having that here. I love that they're preparing this long-term run, and I was really intrigued to see how they do this episode, because this episode today, to me, is like I hate the term origin when I'm not thinking of superhero stuff, but Ellie's character arc is complete today.
Yeah.
Where she is for the season. That's not a spoiler for next week. What sits with her, and this is why Left Behind being last week is so much more important, is that we got to see what made her, what put her on this journey, what were her circumstances, what were her interests. Obviously, Riley, her relationship status, choosing to come back and look after Joel. And this week was all about taking this, not necessarily innocent teenager, but you've got to take her to the point of no return where she becomes this person in this world. And that ending, the bit, I know I'm jumping ahead, but the whole build up to the finale tonight, I thought was so well done. And once again, is an amazing performance by Bella Ramsey, who is absolutely smashing this series. And I kind of said many weeks ago that she grows with the series. And part of me just thinks it's worked out so well in that respect that it's almost how the episodes went from being Joel-centric to sort of slow, like the game. You're centered around Joel, then you're going to bring in Ellie slowly, and boom, then you're with her. And that's exactly what this has done. It's made that jump to doing it to TV, and I just thought Bella Ramsey's amazing, and her chemistry, what chemistry there could be with Scott Shepherd. I thought their relationship, not as such, but their back and forths, I thought was really interesting today. And I just loved seeing her isolated, and it's her looking after Joel. Last week was the concept, but this week was I am looking after him, I will save him. And we saw her weaknesses, the leap to say I need medicine. We got her strength sneaking up on them. I just thought she's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, like a great battle, I guess. You get, two people who absolutely know what they're doing. And every time someone tries to get someone else, they block it and they hit it right back, and it is such a back and forth that you're fearful for her, but you do think, oh, she's got this isn't completely hopeless. Look what she's just done to Troy Baker. Like we know what she's capable of when she's put under extreme pressure, and this is kind of as extreme as it gets for her, more so than it's been with Infected. And it just kind of re-earths everything by saying, humans can also be the threat, which I think always has to be reminded in this. Humans were a threat to each other before this, and they will continue to do so during this. Just because the world ends doesn't mean everyone sticks together and everyone turns morally good. There's a massive grey area, and David is right in the center of that. So
yeah, it's very so. We've got a couple of more comments. The character believed in self-pride instead of actual faith or the path. For example, the court was more what spiritual church is. Not trying to be religious, but there's a difference. I mean, if I just give my own 2 cents, it just felt like every single American religious stereotype we see over here in the UK and representative media. Go look at the salaries of people in high positions within the church and how they dictate towns and laws, and that's the closest I'll get to getting political with certain religions on this channel.
I mean, I was gonna say that I'm gonna plug this review one more time, but I mean, David, says a certain quote from the Book of Revelations, which happens to be used at the end of Titanic. So plug that Titanic review one more time. And he's like, and there shall be no more death, and there shall be no more pain, and like the former world has passed away. Whatever that is, he said that at the beginning of the episode, and I was like, oh my god, he's just a fan of Titanic. He's not a real preacher at all. But he says to Ellie he didn't really find religion or God until after the outbreak, whatever that means. But I mean, maybe there's people who are religious and people who lead that are in massive positions of power. If you want people to believe in you, then that's maybe the way to do it. Clearly, and I said this before we went live, but clearly it is about self-preservation. It is a superiority complex. Like he absolutely, you look at him compared to everyone else, and he is so clean cuts and like made up. Everyone else looks a bit has gone through wear and tear.
You can tell he's the leader, right? He's clearly got that extra. Guys, we're all struggling, but not me. And you know, he's got his large bowl of whatever they're. I mean, we can assume what's in that bowl. But
that
it looked like
father.
he fed his own her own dad to her. Insane. Such a good scene.
After slapping her, like, oh my god, I'm your father. Like, sick. Just
and that's what kind of the awful villains are ones I always love seeing on screen, because obviously there's a bad way to play a villain, but I think when you have these layered, textured ones, I think it must be so much more interesting for an actor. And certainly with this one, what this series has had, we haven't really had villainous humans, and that sounds so stupid. You know, when you look at this series, the core of the series has been love so far. You get Ben and Frank, you get Tess and Joel, you have Ellie and Riley. Normally, you know, it's an infected comes for them. Obviously, we've got Kathleen in episode 4 and 5, but her arc is centered around the loss of her brother. Sam and Henry, the other brothers, and everything is about that. What, you know, is the power of love, without getting into that bit. But this was, I guess, self-love, right? This was this insane take that I've freed these people, I've picked up these people, I'm gonna take this girl who knows involved in someone's death, but I'm gonna take her and try and make her mine. Nonce, let's get it out there. But as well as that, it is that I'm above all of you, and all the other ones have got the gun to her head and want to kill her. They could still do it, but none of them do, because they know that's the power that he has in this episode. And I think that it lends itself. I don't want to go into a speech from Batman Begins, but there's this incredible scene. Obviously, everyone's seen it with Falcone, where he talks about power is just something you can't buy. You know, I could take a gun and shoot him. I could take a gun and shoot him, and boom, I'll get away with it because I've got power. And that's kind of like David in this, that he can command everyone in that room. He can tell the others, yeah, we're going to start eating humans. And I get his issue that, you know, they're all going to die out if they don't. But it's that morality complex. And I just think for what we had from him from under an hour, I think it was very brave of them to give us so many scenes of him without Ellie and the others, because I think we needed that. We needed to see what he was like. And obviously, when you get to the ending, not only is it so much more satisfying, it's not only is it so much better for Ellie, but he's got what he's deserved. And I think leaning into how was this person end up like this, I think it's far more interesting as a viewer.
Yeah. I think he's the first character in the show where I think 100% there is no coming back for you. There's nothing. Everyone else is at least something. There's a reason why they're doing this. This guy was born evil. Like I don't believe there's any part of him that would make me want to, actually fight for him and go, well, do you know what? He's done this. However, if he never does that again, there's all this good that he's got. And I don't believe that's there. Not anyone can be a leader, but I mean, there are people who can step up to the plate to take that leadership position. There are people who can go and fight for other people. He's fighting for other people purely for the position of power that he holds. And clearly that's what he wants. He wants that in every single sense. And it's like he kind of puts himself as kind of like an actual person of the Lord, essentially. I mean, he says father so many times that it's very weird. It's massive daddy issues. But yeah, it's the fact that, you get from, the lines from the episode that he was a certain way before this happened. And that this has now
a teacher. He's a nonsense. Well, yeah. He was a teacher.
I didn't write a lot down because I've not written a lot down recently, but I wrote my second thing after the Titanic thing was, so David went from math teacher to cannibalistic rapey preacher. And I thought, great, that rhymes. But I was like, that's all I could think of. And I'm like, wow, you really went from, because that math teacher, that makes you think, oh God, what did he do? Or what could he have done? To then go, oh, well, I can't be that anymore. Let's be something else where I will be in a position of power over young, impressionable people. And where even their parents or just older people will follow because they know that, oh, well, someone who's a preacher can't do any wrong.
Exactly. And that's the way history was for many a century. Recent history, some current history. Current circumstances probably is a better term. And I just thought it was a very interesting way for them to approach it. And kind of in line of that, we've got to talk about another character. We'll get to Joel in a bit, but we have to, of course, talk about the character James, played by Troy Baker, also known as Joel from The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. Now, I think we all knew he was going to be in this. I think in that first trailer, you could see him in the corner. I think what surprised me in a really nice way, obviously with Jeffrey Pierce, not to plug the interview once more, but obviously we had the very fine chance to interview him, which was really cool. It was a really great discussion. I've loved how this series has treated and respected those involved with that first game. We'll be having this same conversation next week because obviously there's one person to come, arguably the most important one, who knows. But the fact we've had Jeffrey Pierce, we've had Troy Baker, we've had, oh God, I forgot the name of the actress that plays Marlene. That's very embarrassing. For 4 people reprising their roles. Not everything's going to do this, but I feel that there's this respect and there's this approach taken to this adaptation where they understand the importance of these. And although they can't give them full roles, they can't give them their roles back, bar one. It's something that is like, okay, we want to get you an episode, but we don't want to just chuck you in the background. We want you to be involved as much as we can get you involved. And I love that he was playing this sort of awkward right-hand man that you think, oh, is he going to try and take out David? Is he looking to one-up him? Is he going to try and take over this, clan of cannibals? But he never did. And I thought that's what I thought was really interesting. And Merle Dandridge was the one that played Marlene. Thank you, Sam, for sending me that. That's really bad. I should remembered. But what was your thoughts on just getting him in the episode? And I guess he got an extended amount of screen time as well. And also, like Jeffrey Pierce, got to go out in his own way.
Yeah, I mean, he's great. His voice is recognizable. I mean, it did take me a few seconds before I was like, oh, yeah, of course. And it's definitely, he definitely did something to it to make it different from his. But you can hear the Joel twang in there. You can hear it. It's so clear as day. But I was surprised with the role because, it was kind of like, I can't remember if in the game if David did have kind of like a kind of second in command. This is very much what
I can answer it for you because I played the game recently. David does go out with somebody else to first get the deer. I can't remember. I don't think he gets named, but it's very similar. And that exact same character also gets killed. Not the exact same way, but in the same scene, the butcher pretending to be infected. So I was surprised. I thought, oh, they've extended a role, but I think by giving him a name, and I think having him round to get Ellie to take her back, I think they're able to give him a little bit more. But I think that just kind of made it a bit more fulfilling, I guess, as a fan.
Yeah, I think there was enough there. I don't think it took away. I think something like having, him there could be detrimental because anyone who's played the games could then go, oh my God, it's Saturday. It's real Joel. And could, maybe not vibe with that because it's mixing too much. But he plays the character that he needs to play. It's done very well. The character's not given any special treatment or attention. Like he's like any other character, and he goes out in a great way as well. So in a brutal way. But yeah, I think the actual level of that character is interesting because he definitely seems like he's got way more of a conscience than
doesn't eat the food, does he? No. He picks up the smallest bit of the meat. And then go back to the opening scene when the girls, I want to bury my father. And he goes, oh, David looks at James in that, and James just turns and looks down. So either they've already cooked him or they haven't. But it's one of those where there's so many little implications, and he's clearly the number 2 of the camp.
Yeah.
But I love that, as you said, there's these little bits that go with it. And you're right. I think for someone that 90% of the time would be not developed, I wouldn't say he's developed at all, but someone you could easily reduce screen time or do less with, I'm glad that they kept an actor in. Even that weird butcher guy who was cooking the meat got to at least go out and get killed by Joel, which was pretty
Yeah.
great. But yeah, sorry.
No, I was just saying, because you need with a character like David, you need at least one other person for him to kind of like interact with. Anyway, you need that with any of these villains, so that you get some back and forth with them to get how are they with their peers. And I say that, I use that term very loosely, but compared to the back and forth between David and Ellie, which would be completely different and were completely different. But no, it's just interesting. But it's also, it's as I mentioned earlier, it's when we're introduced to that, it's about that guy Alec, who was the father, who was the one that was killed at the end of episode 6. And in my mind, I kind of go, oh well, of course the people that are there are linked to that, of course. But at the same time, yeah, if I think realistically, how far would Joel and Ellie get from their location before Joel went down? How far is Ellie then realistically going to take Joel to get shelter? Probably not far away from there. So that makes sense. But I think in my mind at first I was like, oh, that's so convenient that it's these people. But no, I like that. And it does, like I said, I think it sets things up that, things can come back to bite you.
Yeah.
And this was one of them, unfortunately.
Kind of with that scene, I'm glad you brought it up. Actually, in the game. So obviously, when I played it again after after I'd watched it, I completely forgot that in the game, David still has the same sequence of events where it's very much like, oh, some bad guys went out and they came across a guy and a girl, and the guy's probably wounded. When you're playing the level, obviously it's a game, right? It's a shooter. There's tons and tons of raiders coming through that university. And obviously, David's camp is more of a group of raiders surviving more so than a community, which is something I think they handled really well, making that jump. Because I think you can bring in the conscience, as you mentioned, of the other people in that scenario, keeping it a secret. I love the fact that you go back to episode 6, and there was 4 people. 4 people went to that university. One of them was killed. 3 made it back with the body, clearly to eat. That to me is a very not important change, but it's making that jump from TV to game again, that these are going to connect, but we need to do it in a more confined setting. I think because we have Left Behind last week, you forget about the university campus itself. And this is kind of going back, this isn't a criticism of last week at all, but that mindset of when you're watching all the episodes together, Left Behind is like a literal flashback in the sense of we're going to dip out for an hour and go straight back forwards. Whereas obviously on a weekly watch, we've not been there for 2 weeks now. What's happened for 2 weeks? So it's really interesting the different approaches they had. But again, it's making those changes that's going to work better on a linear TV series compared to a video game. And I think it makes the scenario more interesting that they know there are 2 people out there. And it lends itself to a great speech of David where, he's worked out that this girl is the girl from that group. And I love the fact that James has told everyone already back at the base at the slaughterhouse, where it's like he goes in and there's an awkward silence because James has told everyone, we found the girl, he's let him get away with our stuff. And I like that instantly you think, okay, is David at risk? No, he never was. He's still in control. And it's such an interesting performance. I think there's a lot going on in that performance. I'd love to hear some more behind the scenes about this episode because I think the Scott Shepherd stuff is really, if they get his character wrong today, I think the episode can't function at all. But they had the right actor. And I can't sit here and say I've seen Scott Shepherd in tons of stuff. I know he's done a lot of TV work. He's had supporting roles in a few films. I've seen him in a few things myself. But I love the fact it wasn't a big name. And I remember when the series was announced, when people were doing fan castings, they always had like really big names to play David because we know he's important. But if you'd have had a face that everyone could recognize on the spot, a Nick Offerman perhaps, I know he's not as well known, but you'd instantly associate to other things. And I think by not having that, by not casting an actor who always plays weirdos, maybe both Bond fans. If Robert Carlyle was in The Last of Us, he'd have played David. and it'd have been amazing. But you'd have sat
Yes,
there and
yeah.
said, it's Robert Carlyle. Of course he's going to be a dodgy person. And I think they got the right actor, the right reputation of an actor for this intricate role. I don't know if I'm just waffling at this point. Do you kind of see where I'm coming from?
No, I do. I mean, and going to what Martin said before, I mean, you need to think about the general audiences who don't know what's going to happen, and you need to really kind of make this work for them more so than us, I think. And so you kind of I think you can go all over the place with a character like David. It could have gone one way or the other. Like there's I think plenty of different outcomes, but it goes to kind of like one of the worst outcomes that it could have, which of course could have been way worse. But then you need to have that satisfying payoff. But what does that payoff do to Ellie, and what's that going to do for her moving forwards? And we've already had glimpses of what her kind of extreme violent tendencies she can have when forced into danger. But then what does that develop into? How does a teenager then take that forward? But it was done so well, and again, like that's like one of the main elements of the game. It's so important. So the fact that again the relationship between David and Ellie was done so well with the limited time. I do wish there was more time, but I think with what was there, it was done justice. So
yeah, absolutely. And kind of in line with that, I guess we haven't spoke about Pedro yet. Pedro Pascal, just happens to be the lead actor in the two biggest shows in TV in the world at the moment. One airs every Monday, one airs every Wednesday. We got him back in this, and I absolutely loved him in this. And this is one of these things where I'm going to talk about the game again, that when you're playing the game, it's like you wake up as Joel. You wake up, you go and get Ellie. And it's a bit, not quick, but I always wondered, how are you going to play off that kind of thing into a TV series where the audience are not smarter than gamers? That's unfair, but the mechanics of a game are different to the mechanics of how TV can function in storytelling. I loved how they built up his recovery from Ellie having to block the door that he was hiding into, him squirming to get out of bed, to the penicillin. How they handled his return to action per se, I thought was great. I think it was better than the game. I think if he'd have got a gun out and started shooting people, it wouldn't have worked at all in the slightest. But I love the fact that his mission is to get to Ellie. And it's that moment when he gets into the room, like the game, sees the bag, sees the bodies, and thinks she's gone. How Pedro is handled in, I'd say, 10 minutes, 5 minutes of screen time maximum. I think he's amazing again today. And it is, here we are 8 episodes into the series, and the reason why it is working is because we believe their relationship is real. That the two actors have this chemistry, they've had character development where they need each other. And this is why this episode is the penultimate episode of the series, because they have to not just get back together, their minds need to be on the same wavelength. This is my daughter, this is my father. That is what today's episode was all about. He put the daughter in the worst possible scenario, cannibal, rapist, religious man. Then that's going to make for some, not insane TV, but the consequences of that not working out for itself is unbearable. And I love how they handled it. And even the interrogation, which, he'd done a couple of episodes ago of that amazing couple. You point here, and you're going to have to hope it's the same place your wife pointed. I love in this one, it's you point here, I'm going to kill you, but I believe you, I'm going to kill you anyway. I didn't realize that was exactly from the game as well. It'd been a while. Mm. But what did you think of Pedro's scenes and his return?
Well, you need to, I think, despite what I say about kind of wanting this episode to be longer, I think the actual pacing of from Joel's story specifically was done really well. You get the slow build up. You've had him incapacitated the entirety of last episode. You get kind of, he's just passed out. He's out cold. Ellie's going out to try and get a rabbit, which was a lovely callback, even though she didn't get it, unfortunately. But it was great to kind of see again. It's how realistic this is, and just like, right, okay, he's not just going to magically wake up and be fine. And I think it's really showing what this season is doing really well is the mortality of Joel and how much he can take in many different levels, which makes me more excited for what's to come, because I think it changes things. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say that's a really good point. That his conversation with Tommy is, I don't want to get rid of her because I don't like her. It's I don't trust myself to be able to take her to the end and get this done. I need someone younger. I'm not the guy I was. And that's again like done in this so well. Last week he tells her to go and leave. This week it is, I'm going to come and save her, but he's not there yet. And again, like the game, there's no, I'm going through the snow, I'm going to shoot 30, 40 people. He goes straight into that building and he's there for her as she comes out. And I think that's important. They make the right choices around those decisions.
Yeah, and I think it's the reason why this is such a turning point for Ellie, because it is kind of the true realization that when you're on your own, you have to do something. That Joel is not always going to be there, and it is the same in the game. She's got to do this on her own, and this is for us as players. It's the first time that we play as Ellie. We really are, finding our feet with her. But no, I mean the use of Joel, his then interrogation, if you can even call it that, because it's just not even that. It's basically demands and then kills, and it's painful and it's terrible, and it makes me think of the things that him and Tess may have done prior to the series starting. What the kind of things that he's done, that where he was questioned, oh, have you done this stuff in the past, or whatever that was, and it's like, oh well, he could have killed many innocent people or something. These people weren't so innocent, but even then they were pleading, and I felt a little bit sad for them, a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. So it was great. It was great to see that, and it was just great to see his struggle. And I think what this then does is it's his own realization that this girl has saved me, and kind of what have I been doing? And that the relationship has gotten a little bit closer. There's not been such a gradual build up like I thought there had been in the game. I think because we have had much less time, we don't see kind of the natural traveling element of this a little bit, which I think is a loss for the show a bit, because you kind of need those. I think people might complain that there's been a very much a lack of infected as well with that, but again, it's down to the characters. But no, and so Joel did good, and Pedro is amazing, and as always. But no, then we get to the end of the episode, and I'm just like, oh my god, like just get to her. Like I know it's going to happen, but I'm like, get to her now.
The ending itself, I mean, let's talk about the level from the game, the boss battle from David. This was a question a lot of people had: are we going to get the David boss fight in a series? And I've got to hand it to them. To me, I remember this was really strange. The first ever time I played it on PS3, I did it like the first time, and everyone's telling me it's a really hard boss battle, and I sort of laughed it off. Every time I've played the game since, I've really struggled. Even recently, I've really struggled to defeat David. The moment the fire starts, he comes in the room, she hides by the door. I sort of laughed today, and it wasn't a laugh like this is Harry. I was like, it's like the pointing Leo meme, isn't it? That it's like it's the mechanics of the game, like they've done it, and obviously because my dad's not played it, he doesn't understand that. And when the episode finished, I didn't show him the whole thing. Of course, I wouldn't. But I was like, you just got to look at the attention to detail of like, this is what it was in the game, this is it in the show. And I love that. Obviously, you can't have an entire boss battle like that, but the fact they get to her jumping out, stabbing him, running away, and we get more of that sort of stuff. They handled it in a really unique way where he still felt like a villain. Obviously, we then get when Sky dropped the, scenes of a distressing sexual nature, stuff like that. Obviously, I know what's potentially going to come. And the scene itself, the build-up, the clave, I just thought it was, again, the performance from Bella Ramsey in this episode today. I mean, the scenario itself, having a teenager having to not reenact, obviously, but having a teenager doing it, that's tough. That's going to be tough for any teenager to do a scene like that, put themselves in the shoes in that situation. But the way Bella handled it, the way she, and again, it's what I mentioned earlier about this origin thing. This is the moment she's going to turn into the Ellie we know, and just the way it was done, the follow up, meeting Joel outside, not inside, in the snow, the blood on the face, his sort of screaming noises until there's nothing, and then it's just the sound of, you know, a brain and a face being mauled in and over. It was so expertly done in a sort of devastating way that this is because a child, you know, this is the danger of humanity. And as you mentioned earlier, there's been a lack of infected. Some people don't like that, but for me, I think it's the root of the show. You know, the infected is almost a MacGuffin to this entire series, that she is a cure to the infection. But when the villains are the humans, when the issues is humanity's race, what does it mean that there is infected people going around? And I like the fact the show is reminding us of what it is that makes The Last of Us. It isn't the fact that they're infected. It is the people, the characters, the relationships. And that's what has certainly been way more obvious in the show, rewatching, you know, Bill and Frank, of course, Joel and Tess, Kathleen and her brother, Sam and Henry, Ellie and Riley, even in a disgusting way, David and his weird cults. He loves himself and they worship him. That's in there backwards. And I just think the way they've built up to everything today was superb. And it was a really important scene. And what I loved is when I woke up on Twitter this morning, a lot of people were saying, you know, I've not played the game, and this is one of the best scenes of the entire series. And it does make me think that if people haven't played the game, I'm envious of their experience watching this, because I think this episode is going to catch them off guard like no other.
Yeah, I mean, the last few minutes really kind of take you on a bit of a roller coaster, because you go from kind of the drama of Ellie's escape to then fear and tension. It was that shot where she's crouched down and she's side on, and she's in focus and he's out of focus.
He says the line as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, and it was just like, it was like being in the game, and but it reminded me of like other video games as well. It reminded me of like Everything or Nothing, the James Bond game. It made me think of like when
it's the third person.
That's exactly it. It's exactly it. And it just, I was like, this is weird, but in a great way, because you don't, when you see those moments, it was like when you saw the shots in the car in episode 1, it just gives you kind of like weird flashbacks. And to see her crouching, crawling around, it was so good. The dressing of the set, everything just looked so authentic. And again, so much like the game, I don't want to like compare it to the game so much, but it's so weird when this is so similar. It's so very similar. But yeah, to then go to absolute fear and distress, to then see this still child in emotional distress is the worst thing. It's actually just horrifying. You don't even care about the fire. You're caring that this girl is trapped, cannot escape from this guy. He is saying these things, like she spits, and he's saying like to, I can't remember what he says, but it's like not fighting or whatever. And you know the implications. And I don't know if you hear a little bit of his bell or whatever, but it's enough to make you go, I want this person dead right now. It leads that crescendo of her getting the axe, which, you know, is the big moment of that scene in the game. So you kind of feel relief when she does it, even though it's so horrifying. And I think you could uncomfortably laugh, because it's like, oh God, I was really scared then. I was so fearful. But you know, Bella Ramsey, like you said earlier, just knocks it out of the park. And I can't even imagine having to being an actor and having to portray a scene like that, because I mean, that's a lot of responsibility as well. It's not to just do the scene. Yeah, it's to do the scene justice, but of course you want to be authentic and you don't want to offend anyone. And you definitely don't want to make a joke out of it. Absolutely not. So I'm proud it was done so well, because it could have been done horrendously. But I like the change of her getting out of there. She does everything. It's just like Joel doesn't come in to the diner place It is her escape, her killing David, getting out of there, and then Joel appearing. I mean, my one kind of criticism is like, where's everyone else here? What's happened? Because we don't see anyone, which I think is a little bit weird. And I'm gonna make an assumption that they will not appear in the next episode. So it just feels a little bit like what
just cuts to back, doesn't it? They start walking away, and it just the credits roll.
At least with the whole Kathleen, plot, all the infected were going to that QZ. So it was like it's pretty much game over for them. But for these people, it's like, well, what's happening?
Yeah. Wow. There's a bit of cooked meat for them in case they did clock it. But aside from that, we've got one comment by Poe, aka Snorlax. I thought he was going to be a nonce. That was a relief. Yes, not the sort of thing you can get away with. It's almost like the not kiss of death, but it's the you're a villain, you're this, you're that, and you're doing that. Yeah, you're not going to last long, mate. And I think they as you said, it's a very delicate subject, and I think they handled it very well.
I was gonna say it's like a tick box for everything that could lead you to being like, public enemy number one in an apocalypse. So you're a cannibal, you have had a dark past, you like children. Yeah, like it's like, okay, you've won apocalypse bingo. You are the next to die.
Slapped the kids. Proper backhander with the gloves.
Made her eat his fat. Like it just. He gets under my skin. But that means they've done a fantastic job. I feel like no characters made me
I did sit there thinking, not how does cannibalism work, but when that food came out, I was like, that's a lot of meat for one person. I was like, I don't want to ever know how the fuck they're going to find that stuff, but I was like, they've done a good job there for all intensive purposes. Different conversation for probably a very different time, but I was just so curious, like how were they getting that much meat out? Like, I was so curious. Don't want to know because I'll probably throw up. But it was just that awkward. Like the mother, the grieving mother, cooked it, and the daughter ate it. Like, how much worse could it be? And that the pause from the butcher, where he's like, venison. I was like, just the mom know. Like, it was fascinating. I think they lost themselves a horse. They had bagged them out for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But
didn't they bring the horse? Didn't they bring the horse? Didn't he say to bring the horse or something?
Yeah, the dead body was in the room and he got Ellie's rucksack.
Right, okay.
But I mean, I'm getting very weird cannibal vibes now. I'm not a cannibal, just to clarify. I'm just curious. Weird cannibal vibes now. Aside from that, though, we've kind of spoke about everything we can for today, for this episode, which has been a pretty great episode. I'm going to put you on the spot, Sam. You've played the game. We're not going to spoil it. What are your thoughts for next week? Are you looking forwards to the finale?
I am, but I feel like it's just not going to go down as I currently know it to be. I feel like there's been enough kind of shifts here and there. But if you're going to end a season, I think one, you kind of have to make it your own, and you can't just do it one and the same as the game. But two, you really want to make it open for season 2. And I think I would guess that whilst making this, they were pretty confident with what they had, that they would not make this they would not leave it so it could be closed if it wasn't picked up. I'm pretty confident of that, but excited for sure. But I am worried. Yeah.
I'm excited to be watching it. It's going to be. I mean, it airs during the Oscars. We're going to be live Oscar Sunday as
they've not changed it, have they? We did question if they were going to change it or not.
We'll have another YouTube short reaction, the last one that's going to go up whilst we're live doing the Oscars as well, which is going to be weird. Then we're going to have to plug it and all that sort of stuff. So it is coming back. We've got one more episode. I'm going to miss these Monday nights because they've been a lot of fun. But the fact we're one episode away from season 1 confirmed of The Last of Us finishing, it's a very exciting, interesting time. We've got a great combo, Simon. Another outstanding episode. I was worried they couldn't fit everything into a 50-minute runtime, but they pulled off. And that was it. I thought, again, this would easily be 2 episodes. You could do a finale here. You can segue, switch things around. But I think they handled this very well. And I think it's because those changes they made to David more and the group more than anything.
Yeah, like I can't say I'm not disappointed, but at the same time, I'm not saying that they didn't do it right or they didn't do it well. I think it was done very well.
Yeah.
And I guess, again, you don't really need to kind of draw it out, but I think it builds up the tension. And I think a lot with The Last of Us is built on that. But that's because you're playing it. So added tension in a game can sometimes be way more heightened than it will be you watching a TV show, and vice versa. It depends on what media it is. But no, in this case, I think it does work. We get into the finale. Everyone who's played the game knows what's coming up. But are we going to be surprised? And I don't, and that's the horrible thing about this now.
Listen, I got to watch it as a work in progress. There wasn't a complete soundtrack. There wasn't complete visual effects. There's certainly one scene I'm very much looking forward to seeing. And I'm going.
Do we get a rat? Do we get a rat king in this one? I mean, can you imagine?
Say,
can you imagine?
It is going to be exciting to see people watch it next week, and it'll be exciting to get everyone to join us for the finale. So that's probably going to do it for our review for today. As we've sort of done, we want everyone to comment below their thoughts on episode 8, When We Are in Need. What a great episode name for like When We're in Need. Do you think of David? Terrible. A great title within itself. But as I said, if you'd like to, please do consider hitting subscribe if you're new to the channel. If you're a big fan of The Last of Us, we've got a whole playlist. We've got the spoiler-free review of the entire series, Jeffrey Pierce interview. Of course, we've got our weekly spoiler discussions. We have these YouTube shorts we're testing out, which go up when the episode finishes airing. It's basically an advert for these, if I'm being honest, because the spoiler discussions are far more exciting and important. But it is an interesting time. And we've also got another show starring Pedro Pascal that also airs weekly. It's called The Mandalorian. You may have heard of it. Every Wednesday night, we'll go live with our spoiler discussions. It is going to be chapter 18 this Wednesday. And we will have times nearer because we haven't got it sorted yet. And we'll have an update when we do. So you can get your Pedro Pascal hype. If you want to follow us, find us more. There's a lot of Star Wars stuff happening on this channel. Star Wars celebrations in just over a month away. We're working on some cool stuff behind the scenes. You can find us on our Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. A link to Redbubble in the description if you want to help support the channel with any merch. But as I said, we're on the Pedro hype. We're on the Last of Us hype. We've got one more week. It's going to be an insane week. We've got one more wait. People can pick up the game if they want to play it far out early or play the game after the series is finished. It's up to you. But as always, Sam, thank you so much for coming on for tonight. I know taking time out of your day is always appreciated. To everyone that's been commenting, thank you. And as I said, there's a lot more stuff happening. We've got the Rocky 2 4K review. We're hoping is up tomorrow. Brackets when they actually deliver it. We've got a few Oscars things. We've got to get a review for Tara and Women Talking by Sunday as well. So a couple more Oscar films to do. But until then, we'll see you on the next one. Take care.